Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a dominant team that Meweedle used to climb up to #1 in the world on the global leaderboards, featuring Morpeko. Morpeko is an extremely glassy Pokemon. However, in my view, it has one of the highest skill ceilings of any Pokemon in Go Battle League, meaning that it's difficult to use, but when used well, it is very difficult to stop. The team Meweedle ran featured the Morpeko on the lead, Goodra as the safe switch, and Azumarill as the closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at this rank 1 in the world team in the Open Great League. And we're off to a tough start in the first match. Morpeko into Quagsire. Quagsire is going to farm up quite a lot of energy and send in Jumpluff into this Goodra safe switch. Now this is my Draco Meteor Goodra. I did get lucky TMing it back over to Aqua Tail. I decided that I wanted the Aqua Tail coverage specifically for pacing purposes. So Thunder Punch, not going to do much of anything to this Jumpluff. And yes, you may have noticed I did at long last finally build an Azumarill. Azumarill is a Pokemon that I have not had built for a very, very long time. We are talking years. However, to celebrate Meweedle hitting rank 1 in the world, I decided, you know what, I will actually use Azumarill in the Great League. So this will probably not be a Pokemon that we see on the channel, at least me playing it, ever again. Here I get a massive farm down, in comes the Quagsire, and I will fire off this Psychic Fangs. The opponent shields up the Psychic Fangs, they're going to be firing off the Aqua Tail, and I will be committing the shield. Now I'm Dark Form, which means my Aura Wheel will very easily KO, and that's what I'm counting on them to think. I'm actually going to Psychic Fangs bait again, get the shield. They are now -2 on their defense, which means this Electric Aura Wheel KOs despite being resisted. I switch back to a Dark type. In the back is Mandibuzz, and this thing is just utterly absurd. If you play it well, it is so difficult to stop. I get to land the boosted Dark Aura Wheel, send in the Azumarill. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've got a terrible lead in the next match. Morpeko into Guzzlord. I safe switch into the Goodra, and I'm going to no shield because in the Open Great League, Guzzlord should be on Brutal Swing. My opponent is actually going to switch out into Toxapex, and to me, this is actually a misplay by my opponent. They should have just stayed in with the Guzzlord, tanked the energy because they do resist the energy and farm all the way down, but instead, they send out the Toxapex, and that's great news for me. I have an Azumarill in the back. That is Azumarill's worst nightmare, so this is terrific. I'm going to look to farm up, go for the Electric Aura Wheel on the CMP Tide to deny them from landing a second Brine. Aura Wheel gets the KO, I switch to the Hangry form, and now I am going to be boosted. Opponent is going to bring in Guzzlord. Boosted Dark Aura Wheel will come close to KOing, so I'm going for the Psychic Fangs bait. This bait is going to allow me to get to an Electric Aura Wheel if they try for the farm down, which they do, and this will KO. They're forced to shield. I can now switch into the Azumarill and save the very low health Morpeko. They do have enough for the Sludge Bomb. They go for it, and it's up to Azumarill to sweep in the back, and they have Diggersby as their final Pokemon. They're going to go for Scorching Sands. It has a 30% chance to lower my attack. Scorching Sands does not get the debuff, and now we very comfortably win. If my opponent did get the debuff, then things could have got quite complicated. There's an argument to be made for me throwing the Ice Beam instantly on alignment, so that way I don't have to worry about a potential 30% chance attack drop. But either way, I do get a little bit of good luck there as they do not get that 30% debuff, and now I can properly overfarm to Ice Beam the Diggersby and Ice Beam the Guzzlord, and we're going to be able to take the win. So we had two pretty bad leads back to back, and we're able to win both games because, again, Morpeko, if you play it well, is incredibly flexible. Morpeko into Shadow Drapion. Drapion outpaces, so it's a very easy catch into the Goodra. If they overfarm, they play to a CMP Tide that they do not win. So people really like to throw that Aqua Tail on 4. So getting that catch, they're now going to bring in Cresselia. Baiting out Cresselia is huge. I have the Azumarill in the back. I don't want Cresselia to be hitting me with super effective Grass Knots. And I'm more than happy, as you see by the immediate no-shield, to just let Goodra go. They're on Future Sight. That's very good information. So they're running Future Sight and Grass Knot, so they don't have Moonblast. This means my Morpeko can actually survive a move from the Cresselia. I do have a Psychic Fangs loaded, so I spend the time here trying to think, will a Psychic Fangs KO? I decide not to risk it, so instead, I'm just going to go for the fast move instead of clicking on the Psychic Fangs. Cresselia will go for the Grass Knot, Morpeko able to absorb that damage. In comes the Drapion, and Drapion, I'm going to full send the Aura Wheel. I want to guarantee a knockout or a shield. I grab the shield from the opponent, and now I switch to Hangry mode. I am boosted, but the Aura Wheel is now going to be resisted. So if my opponent wants to, they can let this go. However, it's going to do a massive amount of damage. Aura Wheel connects, I switch back, and I'm switching out into Azumarill to get that bubble farm down. And now I'm basically at full health, but I have a 2 bubble head start. And in the back is going to be Pangoro. I just have to watch for the catch. Opponent is going to wait to try for the catch, but this is just a completely one game for me. I can commit the shield on the Grass Knot, get the bubble farm down. I'm at 100 energy. My opponent's only win con here is if I go for a just senseless Ice Beam bait, so I will go straight for the play rough. Opponent knows the win con, and they're going to no shield, and we're able to take the win. Morpeko versus Galarian Moltres, an unbelievably good lead. They save switch to Feraligatr. Trainer, oh no. This is a core that I ran earlier in the season before Morpeko was out, because Moltres and Feraligatr covered each other's weaknesses very well. However, in a Morpeko meta, this core is not nearly as strong, because Morpeko has a dominant matchup against both, as long as the Feraligatr is not ahead on energy. And here, as you can see, these Shadow Claws are resisted, so I'm taking such little damage from my opponent. I am going to be shielding up the Hydro Cannon. I can throw right away here. My opponent is going to try for a catch onto Gastrodon. I save the energy, bring in Azumarill, and Azumarill with this team is basically the Pokemon that you want to use if you need to just use it as a damage sponge. And here, I can force my opponent to throw 2 Earth Powers. They're going to waste a lot of energy, and since I can tank one, I can land a Play Rough. The threat of an Ice Beam forces their energy. They're going to have to expend all their energy here on the Earth Power, and then I can just bring in Goodra. Goodra going to get a beautiful farm down. Feraligatr has a little bit of residual energy, but I could just bring in Morpeko when they bring in the Moltres. This is going to be a one-hit KO. Morpeko just absolutely insane with the damage. Feraligatr finally gets the KO Morpeko, but I still have a full health Goodra. So I just Dragon Breath down. We don't even need our energy, and that game will be a win. Morpeko versus Shadow Dragonite. This is a pretty bad lead. Typically, I'm going to build up to the Aura Wheel just so I can bluff a shield, go to a second Psychic Fangs, and then try and snipe with the Goodra. Because I can get their defense to -2, and then hopefully sniping with the Dragon Breath will put me in a pretty decent spot. So I go for the Psychic Fangs, they let it go. I'm going to switch into the Goodra, and they get the damage registration error. The Dragon Breath went through. As you're going to see, it knocked them out, but they got the move. That's a mechanic that's inconsistent, and that's a bit unfortunate. Opponent brings in Ferrothorn, and this is terrible considering I have an Azumarill in the back. If my Goodra was healthy, I'd be in a great spot, but it's not. So I am in a pretty dire situation now, where I'm going to need Goodra to put in a lot of work, as my Azumarill cannot deal with the Ferrothorn. I'm firing off Aqua Tail after Aqua Tail, but everything I throw is resisted. Ferrothorn just shrugging off this damage. Ferrothorn looking for a farm down. I get the Aqua Tail. Was that a CMP tie? They are at 100 energy here. Aqua Tail, it is a CMP tie. They do have a move loaded. This game is going to come down to, can I predict when they're going to throw? I do one in the switch, and they don't go for it. And now I'm going to be down a shield versus whatever they have in the back. So I didn't get that prediction right. In the back, they have their own Azumarill, and that's an immediate top left. As down a shield, that's not a winning endgame for me. Morpeko versus Shadow Drifblim, a terrific lead for Morpeko. Opponent is going to save switch to the Shadow Drapion. I try for an Aqua Tail catch there, but my opponent shows great patience holding on to their energy, and now they're going to get to connect with a Crunch. Crunch does significant damage. I'm just going for the Aqua Tail right away on Goodra. Even if I don't win switch advantage, it's not terrible for me because I have Azumarill, and Azumarill also does very good into Drifblim. So my opponent is overfarmed a ton, and I'm just not going to bring in Morpeko. I bring in the Azumarill. They click the Aqua Tail right away to try and get some damage on Morpeko, but that's not what I brought in. I bring in the Azumarill. Opponent is going to bring back in the Drifblim, and the fact that they're pivoting here tells me that they're probably strong to the Azumarill in the back, and they're hoping that I'm going to switch out. But I'm not going to switch out. I'm just going to stay in. I'm just going to let this Azumarill go, and I'm going to trust in Morpeko. I'm looking to switch into Morpeko. What is that final Pokemon in the back? It's a Magnezone. I quick switch into Morpeko, and let's start ramping up our damage. Electric Aura Wheel is resisted, but it sure doesn't look like it. That damage is absolutely unreal. They're just going to go straight Mirror Shot, but it's not going to matter. I can farm up, go for the Psychic Fangs before my opponent is able to make a move. Now my attack is boosted, their defense is debuffed as well, and I'm just going to get a full farm down here. My opponent will be able to switch out into the Drapion, and they do just that. Here, unfortunately, I do miscount, but the good news is my miscount still not going to matter because I can KO in one bubble, and bubble is 3 turns, Volt Switch is 4, so I can KO the Magnezone as well and take the win. We've got Spice from the opponent in the next match. Morpeko into Aurorus. Aurorus is 5'4", 5'4", pacing to Weather Ball, so if you go straight Aura Wheel, they can actually outpace. So that's why I decide to go for a Psychic Fangs bait, as now this means that I'm going to be getting my Aura Wheel when they get their Weather Ball. They're going to go for the Weather Ball. I'm going to click the Aura Wheel. I could go for a second bait if I'm trying to outpace, but to me that felt too risky, so I will commit the shield. We're back to the full belly form, and my opponent farms up to the back-to-back moves. They're probably catching out of this. They know they lose the CMP tie by a mile here, and they do. They're going to catch onto Chestnut. My opponent will have to throw a superpower instantly if they want to deny energy. If they don't, I'm just going to bank an Aura Wheel and switch out, and they throw the superpower right away. Maybe a better play could have been to bank the energy and catch the superpower, but either way, I'm just going to go for farm on Goodra. Goodra gets a very healthy farm down. The thing I have to keep in mind, Aurorus does have a Weather Ball loaded, a Weather Ball Ice. Opponent does not bring in the Aurorus. Instead, they bring in Azumarill. I'm going to farm up a ton of energy with this Goodra, unleash Thunder Punch, and then look to switch into my own Azumarill. I have a pretty nice health advantage here. Even if they land a Play Rough is not going to make up that health advantage. So I'm in a pretty nice spot. I just always need to make sure that I have a lot of energy. I do have an Aqua Tail banked on the Goodra as well. Their Aurorus I don't think is quite in Aqua Tail range. After I throw this move, this will be their cue to switch out. So Play Rough is going to connect onto the Azumarill. Opponent is going to switch into Aurorus, and I will be unleashing Play Rough. Play Rough is going to get them low. We switch into the Goodra and get the combo play. Aurorus had energy, but they don't get to use it as they just get knocked out. In comes Azumarill. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All right, we move to the next match, a positive lead, Morpeko versus the Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash are all on Powder Snow now. Powder Snows will add up a lot. Again, I can't stress enough how glassy this Pokemon is, but realistically, to me, this is the most skill-intensive Pokemon that you can use. It requires very good energy management, but my goodness, it is so powerful. Here, my opponent is going to catch a +1 Dark Aura Wheel onto their Azumarill. That's very fine for me. I can stay in here, throw 7 Thunder Shocks, and outpace. And now my opponent's in a difficult predicament. If they shield, I'm just going to switch into my own Azumarill, and if they let it go, they just get KO'd. So we're already through 1.5 Pokemon on our own. There, I wanted to catch, but I guess I just didn't click it in time. But now I'm just going to bring in my Azumarill into their Alolan Sandslash. And their Sandslash is farming up a massive amount of energy. Here, realistically, I should have clicked to Play Rough after the 7th bubble because I think that could have threatened a knockout. Whereas here, they actually build up to the back-to-back drill runs, but back-to-back drill runs is fine. Azumarill tanks this. This is a very favorable matchup for the Azumarill. They bring in for Alligator. I click the Play Rough, and this game is already over. The opponent just doesn't know it yet. In comes Goodra. Opponent, they're always going to go for a Hydro Cannon bait here, but I'm always going to shield. And now I can just throw 5 Dragon Breaths and go for my Thunder Punch. Because if they click Hydro Cannon, that's fine. Hydro Cannon's not going to do nearly enough damage. They have to try and commit to an Ice Beam, and this is going to give me the residual energy that I need to outpace the Sandslash, make it to an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail will be able to knock out the Sandslash, and we're able to take the win. Hopping into what I believe is the final match here, we got Morpeko into Talonflame. This matchup is actually tricky for Morpeko just because of how glassy it is. The Incinerates, even though they're neutral, just shred through you. Again, I'm going to go for a Psychic Fangs bait, and then I'm going to look to switch into Goodra. Here, my opponent, this could be a Brave Bird. I decide to call it. It's the Brave Bird. I get the call wrong. In comes Drapion, and that is very unfortunate. Drapion is going to be hit with the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail Going to do a little bit of damage, and I'm going to do what I really like to do with the Azumarill. Use it as a meat shield. Opponent throws it instantly. That's the second time a Drapion's thrown an Aqua Tail blindly, assuming I'd bring in Morpeko. But Morpeko is too valuable to just let it take hits when I have an Azumarill that completely walls Drapion. Drapion almost always going to be running Crunch and the Aqua Tail, so being a Water Fairy type, you're in a pretty nice spot. Ice Beam is going to KO. In the back is Ferrothorn. I'm going to bring in Morpeko and fire off the Electric Aura Wheel. This is resisted, but it will still do about like 40% of their health, so that's still very, very valuable damage. Here, my lose con is them having Mirror Shot, just because it paces a lot faster than Power Whip, but they don't have it. They're going to bring in Talonflame. Talonflame is going to be now baited with the Psychic Fangs. They let it go. They try and commit to a farm down, but I get the farm down. And now they know the hardest hitting move is this boosted Electric Aura Wheel. I know my win con is to Psychic Fangs to lower their defense, so then I can land an Ice Beam onto their debuff defense. And again, this is part of what I'm talking about Morpeko. The endgame win cons can be really interesting. It's not always about just clicking the powerful Aura Wheel. In this instance, if I Aura Wheeled, I actually lose. But since I Psychic Fangs baited, got the shield and the debuff, I could Ice Beam and Bubble down and take the win. All in all, big congratulations to Meweedle for hitting rank 1 in the world. Unbelievable accomplishment, and hitting it with Morpeko as well. To me, if a Pokemon hits rank 1 in the world, that really solidifies its legitimacy as a top meta threat. And that's how I feel about Morpeko. Morpeko, it's unbelievably strong, and upon first trying it, I absolutely fell in love, and now I dare to say it might even be a little bit stronger than I initially gave it credit for. This thing is fun to use. It's a Pokemon that you can spend a lot of time learning and really almost feel like you're beginning to master it with the understanding of when to bait versus when to go for Aura Wheel. And yeah, to me, this is a Pokemon. Is it easy to use? No. It's very difficult to use, but it's a Pokemon that if you can play it well, it is very, very difficult to contain. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.